So I spent the last 2 weeks going through every Indian IPO that hit the Indian markets in 2025, and I have some thoughts. Because look, 2025 was supposed to be incredible, right? Record-breaking, 100 plus mainboard IPOs, 1.7 lakh crore raised. We literally became the #1 stock exchange in the world for IPO fundraising. #1. We beat the US, we beat China, we beat everybody, and yet half of those IPOs are trading below their issue price right now. Half. Y Combinator made 109x return on Meesho. That's not a typo. 109 times their money. Peak XV made 52 times on Groww. Axel walked away with 27x on Urban Company, and meanwhile, average listing gains dropped from 29% last year to about 9%. And almost half of the 2025 IPOs are now trading below issue price. So even if you got that listing day pop and tumne hold on kiya, you probably gave it all back. So what the heck happened? Who made money? Who got burned, and what can we actually learn from this? That is what we're doing today. Every major Indian IPO from 2025, the good, the bad, the absolute disasters. Let's get into it. Make sure tum channel ko subscribe karo so that you do not miss out these analysis of the Indian markets. And let's look at the big picture. So first, let me give you the landscape because the numbers are genuinely wild. 2025 May, India had over 100 mainboard IPOs. That hasn't happened since 2007. We're literally talking 18 years. The last time these many companies went public in India, the iPhone had just launched. That's how long ago this happened. The total money raised was 1.7 lakh crore, which sounds amazing until you realize that 63% of that was OFS, yani offer for sale, meaning the money did not go to the company to grow the business. It went to existing shareholders cashing out. VCs cashing out, promoters cashing out, PE funds cashing out. And who were they selling to? Us, the retail investors, you and me. Now here is the part that really got me. In 2024, the average IPO listing gains were about 29%. In 2025, it was about 9%. 9%. बहुत massive drop है ये. And if you look at what's happened since listing, roughly 47 to 50% of 2025 IPOs are currently underwater, below issue price. So the question becomes, was 2025 a great year for IPOs? Or it was just a great year for people selling IPOs? I think you know the answer, but let's look at the actual companies to see how it played out. I want to start with the biggest ones because this is where things get interesting. The largest IPO of 2025 in India, कोई hot startup नहीं था. It was Tata Capital. 15,512 crore, the biggest NBFC listing ever in India. And everyone expected this to be huge. It's Tata, right? The Tata premium, the brand, the trust. Grey market was showing 6 to 7% gains. Easy. But actually में हुआ क्या? 1.23% listing gain. 1.23% on a Tata company, that's like what? 4 rupees a share? And here's the thing, the stock hasn't really moved since. If you bought Tata Capital at listing, hoping for the Tata magic, you've made basically nothing. It's just sitting there around 326 to 330. Now compare that to HDB Financial, HDFC Bank NBFC. This one really actually did well on listing. 12.84% ka pop. QIBs went absolutely nuts, 58 times the subscription in this category. उनको clearly कुछ पता था. But, and this is important, if you are holding HDB today, you're barely 2% above the issue price. वो 12.84% gone, evaporated over the next few months. And this is something I really want you to internalize because it keeps coming up. Listing day gains are not real gains until you actually sell. SEBI ने एक study करी थी and found that around 50% of retail investors sell their IPO shares within the first week. And honestly, looking at the 2025 data, maybe they're onto something because if you held most of these hoping for ज़्यादा upside, you got nothing. Or worse. The plan 2025 was get allotment, sell on listing, and move on. Diamond hands on IPOs were not the move this year. Now, NBFCs are one thing. Big, boring, predictable. But what about the stuff we actually care about? The startup IPOs. This is where 2025 gets really interesting. 18 startups went public this year. These are apps on your phone, services you use, companies you've actually heard of, and results were all over the place. So let me break down each of them, starting with the clear winner. Urban Company was the success story of 2025. No debate, it was the cleanest win. 1,900 crore ka IPO, 103 times the subscription. 103 times, which means for every share available, 103 people wanted it. Your chances for getting an allotment investment were roughly 1 in 100. It was literally like a lottery. But if you won that lottery, 57.5% ka listing gain, one lot made you 8,591 rupees on day one. So the question is, why did Urban Company work when so many others did not? And the answer is two things. One, they were actually profitable. 240 crore ko profit in FY 2025, first full year in the green. And two, there is no real competition. Because who else does what Urban Company does at scale? Nobody. The stock's still trading around 157 to 160. Solid if you got in and held. You're happy. The only problem is that 99% of people who applied did not get any shares. So it's a great story, but most of us were just spectators. Let's talk about the one you might literally be using to trade stocks right now. Billion Brains, which is Grow's parent company, raised 6,632 crores, listed at a 14% premium. Kafi cool. Then it went slightly crazy. Within 5 days, the stock hit 193. That's almost double the issue price of rupees 100. And you knew there was a but coming. If you bought it at that 193 ka peak thinking grow to grow hi karega. You're down 25% right now. The stock settled around 145 to 150. Still, that's about 45% above issue price, and unlike most fintechs, Groww is actually making money. 1,824 crores ka profit tha unka in FY25 versus the loss of 805 crores in the year before. That is a real turnaround. And the VCs cleaned up here. Y Combinator turned 36 crores into 1,055 crores, 29x ka return. Peak XV made 52 times ka return. But for retail investors, agar tumhe allotment mila and you sold in the first week, great. If you bought the post-listing pump, not great. So Urban Company worked because of profitability. Groww worked because of profitability. And you think this pattern is obvious, right? Well, not really. Meesho is interesting because on paper, it should never have worked. It was loss-making, like massively loss-making, 3,942 crore ka loss in FY25. Competing against Amazon, Flipkart, no real profitability ka timeline. Every sophisticated investor would tell you to avoid it. But reality mein, uska 81 times subscription tha, 46% ka listing gain tha. So maybe you can ask ye sophisticated investors ko pata hi kya hai, but here's the thing about Meesho. It is not actually competing with Amazon. It is serving a completely different India. The India that buys 200 रुपए की करती from small sellers, वो WhatsApp में product के link share करते हैं, lives in tier 2, tier 3 cities, and honestly does not care about next day delivery. वो India बहुत massive है and Meesho owns it. Y Combinator's return on Meesho were 109x, the highest multiple of any 2025 startup IPO in India. They turned a small accelerator ka check into 80 crore rupees. And the takeaway is that sometimes bad fundamentals on a spreadsheet serve a real market need that analysts just don't understand. And now we've seen three wins: Urban Company, Groww, and Meesho. And you might be thinking, this startup Wallah IPO thing is actually easy money, but it's not, and nothing proves that better than what happened to Lenskart. Lenskart is a great example of what happens when hype meets reality. Lenskart, Piyush Bansal, Shark Tank ka fame, SoftBank ki backing, everyone's favorite eyewear brand, 7,278 crore ka IPO, 28 times ka subscription, grey market premium was 120 rupees, which suggested 30% ke listing gains bahut aaram se. But what happened? Lenskart got listed at a discount, negative 1.74%. Then it crashed 11% intraday mein, recovered to basically flat by the end of the day. And if you were paying attention, the warning signs were there. Why did Lenskart flop? Sabse pehla, valuation. They priced it at 230x PE ratio. Titan, which is an actual profitable eyewear giant, trades at 80 times. Investors ne ye numbers dekhe and they went, yeah, no thanks. And also, being on Shark Tank doesn't make your stock automatically worth 3 times of what Titan trades at. And market ne wo bahut jaldi figure out kar liya. Lenskart is still hovering around issue price, not a disaster if you held. Still, Lenskart had hype but wrong valuation, but the next one had almost no hype, and that's exactly why it surprised everyone. After the whole Byju's disaster, which can be a whole other video, everyone assumed that EdTech was dead. Nobody wanted to touch it. And इसी scenario में PhysicsWallah raised 3,480 crore. Subscription was just 1.81x. Grey market premium was like 10 rupees. कोई excited नहीं था. And then it listed at a 33% premium. Way better than anyone expected. Way better than the grey market predicted. Why? Because Alak Pandey built something real. उनके पास genuine प्यार है from tier 2 and tier 3 India. The students actually believe in him, and that brand equity showed up when it mattered. तब से stock थोड़ा volatile है. Currently around 115, 120, still above the issue price, but not setting the world on fire. If you got in, you're fine. If you bought post listing, you're probably broken even. अब ये थे तुम्हारे 5 big startup story of 2025, but there were others and let me run through them quickly. Pine Labs 14% listing gain, holding steady, एक solid fintech का play. Bluestone listed at a discount even with Ratan Tata as an investor in 2014. So disappointing. Capillary Technologies 53 times का subscription, listed flat, and SaaS company this year had a rough time. WeWork India 3% discount on listing. The global WeWork bankruptcy just killed any positive sentiment, even though the India business was actually profitable. SmartWorks, nobody talked about this one, but it did quite well. 7% listing gain, now up by 35%. And अब तक हमने एक पैटर्न देख लिया. Some IPOs crushed it, some flopped, and a lot of it did not match what the grey market predicted. Which brings me to something I really need to address. अगर तुमने कभी भी किसी IPO के लिए अप्लाई किया है, so you have probably checked GMP on some website or Telegram group because it's supposed to tell you what the stock will list at. In 2025, it was wrong consistently. Tata Capital GMP ने बोला 6%, actual listing 1.2%. Lenskart GMP ने बोला 30%, actual listing was negative. LG Electronics GMP said 39%, actual was 50%. Groww GMP said 3%, actual was 31%. 30 IPOs this year had positive GMP but listed flat or negative. ऐसा इसीलिए because what investors tend to ignore is that GMP कोई analysis नहीं है. It's gossip. It's a small, unregulated market run by a handful of operators. It can be manipulated क्योंकि high GMP create करता है FOMO. FOMO drive करता है retail applications and that benefits the operators. SEBI is actually working on something called a when-listed platform to formalize this grey market, and until that happens, treat GMP as entertainment, ना कि कोई investment advice. Because you know what actually predicts listing performance? QIB का subscription, qualified institutional buyers. These are the big funds with actual analyst teams doing some due diligence. LG Electronics had 166 times QIB subscription, listed at a 50% premium. So the goal is to follow the smart money, not the Telegram groups. उसके लिए you can also subscribe to this channel because हम weekly तुम्हारे लिए ऐसी smart money videos लेके आते हैं. And speaking of smart money, let's talk about who actually made the real money in 2025 because it probably wasn't who you were expecting. Let's start with the venture capitalist, तुम्हारे VC. Y Combinator 109x on Meesho, 29 times on Groww, Peak XV 52x on Groww, 39x on Pine Lab, Axel 27x on Urban Company, Elevation 36x on Meesho, 19 times on Urban Company, and these are insane numbers, life-changing, fun-defining returns. Peak XV alone cashed out over 2,480 crore this year. But now, let's compare that to retail. The average listing gain was 9.1%, and that is if you got allotment, which in hot IPOs meant like a 1% chance. And if you sold at the right time, which most people did not. समझने की जरूरत ये है कि the game is different for VCs. They invest early at low valuation with board seats and information that we don't have. Then they exit into the IPO hype, and on the other end of the table is us. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि IPOs में invest करना बंद कर दो. What I'm saying is that understand the game that you are playing because it is not the same game that the VCs are playing. But look, bad returns are one thing. तुम recover कर सकते हो from a 9% disappointment. What you cannot recover from is fraud. And 2025 had one of the worst that I have ever seen. We need to talk about this because it is the most important lesson of 2025 and इसका listing gain से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है. Gensol Engineering, BluSmart, the Jaggi brothers. हाँ, ये 2025 का IPO नहीं था. Gensol listed years ago, but the collapse happened this year. And if you're investing in IPOs, you need to understand what went down. Gensol was a solar company that raised 978 crore in loans. That money was supposed to buy 6,400 electric vehicles for their ride-hailing app, BluSmart. SEBI ने investigate किया, found that only 4,704 vehicles were actually purchased. 262 crore was just missing. And वो गया कहाँ? A 43 crore apartment in DLF Camellias, golf equipment worth 26 lakhs, 50 lakh invested in Ashneer Grover's fund, money transferred to the promoter's mother, and SEBI के exact words थे, they were using the company like a piggy bank. In April 2025, SEBI barred the Jaggi brothers from the securities market. BluSmart shut down overnight. 8,500 drivers lost their income. 800 employees went 4 months without salaries. Customers' wallet balances were logged and probably gone forever. The stock crashed 90% from 1,147 to 123. 8 lakh से ज़्यादा retail shareholders watched their money disappear. And the thing is कि वो red flags हमेशा से थे. If you read the filings carefully, the cash flows did not add up. The related party transactions थोड़े sketchy थे. The debt was piling up. But people saw कि एक EV company है and green mobility है and assume करा कि it was legit. But what they did not understand कि narratives are not fundamental. Buzzwords are not due diligence. People भूल जाते हैं reading the risk factors in DRHP. Check करना if the cash flows are making any sense. Because if something seems off, it probably is. Alright, the dark part is over. Let me bring this home with the full scorecard of what is coming next year. अगर मेरे को 2025 के IPO market को summarize करना हो in one frame, here is how it breaks down. The winners were Urban Company, 57% on listing, still holding. LG Electronics, 50% on listing, 36% above issue price. Meesho, 46% above listing. PhysicsWallah, 33% above listing. Groww, 45% above issue price. Rubicon Research, 28% on listing. Middle of the road थे Pine Labs, HDB Financials, Hexaware, Tata Capital, and the disappointments were Lenskart, Bluestone, Stars, Orkla India. But that also gives us an idea of what is coming in 2026 and हमें किसके लिए excited होना चाहिए. Reliance Jio is the big one. Confirmed for the first half of 2026 could be 50,000 crores or more. Potentially India's largest IPO ever. 500 million, 50 crore से ज़्यादा subscribers की उम्मीद है. Everyone and उनकी grandmother will apply for this. Flipkart just got approval to shift from Singapore to India. They're targeting 8 to 10 billion, but ये समझना जरूरी है that Walmart already owns 85%. PhonePe, DRHP filed, waiting on SEBI. Zepto, board का approval आ गया है for going public, and quick commerce is the new hot sector. Now, based on everything we've seen this year, here's my framework for going into 2026. You can take it or leave it. 1. Ignore GMP completely. It is just noise. 2. Watch what the institutions are doing. High QIB subscription matlab hai smart money is interested. 3. Check if the insiders are selling everything. 100% OFS ka matlab hai everyone with information wants out. Ask yourself why. 4. Profitability matters more than narrative. Urban Company and Groww worked. They made actual money. The loss-making companies had way more volatile outcomes. And 5. Listing gains are not real until you book them. अगर तुम्हारे को 30% का pop मिल भी गया on day 1, consider taking it. Holding for more has not been the winning strategy this year. And 6. Read the damn DRHP, especially the risk factors. I know वो 400 pages के होते हैं, but at least skim it. It might save you from the next Gensol. 2025 was a record year for IPOs, but record activity का मतलब नहीं है record returns भी आएंगे, at least not for real investors. The VCs made generational wealth. The promoters got liquidity. The bankers collected अपनी fees, and we got to participate. Sometimes profitably, often not. And that's it. And that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching it in the end. If this was helpful, make sure you subscribe. हम cover करेंगे what individual IPOs आने वाले हैं 2026 on this channel, especially with Jio, which is going to be the whole thing. Until then, do your own research. Don't trust the Telegram and GMP groups. And remember, if a deal seems too good to be true, it is probably because you're the exit liquidity. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.